Han en av USAs mest myteomspunne og seiglivete politikere og tilbringer all sin tid med å bekjempe miljøødeleggelser og forurensning. Californias guvernør Jerry Brown mener at klimakrisen vår tids aller største utfordring, og han arbeider lidenskapelig, må det være lov å si, for å redde kloden. Samtidig han en av president Donald Trumps argeste kritikere, og han med oss I kveld som vår gjest her fra det norske vitenskapsakademi. Yeah,
you have to kind of sit up. You can't sit back.
But it's okay. Governor, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Tell me, is the world going to hell?
Yes.
How come?
Well, I said that rather quickly, and it brought to mind a comment of Robert Oppenheimer, who was one of the key inventors of the nuclear bomb that America invented and dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And he said shortly after that, and I think in the face of the new reality of nuclear weapons, that the world is going to hell at an increasing rate of speed with a positive rate of acceleration. And it will continue unless it can find a way to these weren't his words, but in his sense, collaborate, learn to trust and work together in a way that is unusual and historically not so common. But yes, we have lots of good things going on, lots of risks. We have the risks of nuclear, we have the risks of climate change, we have the risks of species extinction, we have the risks of financial instability because of the integration of these large financial institutions. And so great power, but great danger is the way I would put it more accurately.
Dr. Oppenheimer said this in 1945, and many, many years later we're faced with some of the other challenges that you mentioned, but you are here in Norway to talk about the cooperation between scientists and policymakers, politicians, about how to curb the greenhouse effect, the climate change. And there is an agreement between your great state of California and Norway on these issues. And how can Norway and California benefit mutually from such an agreement?
Well, we benefit, Norway and California, and joining with all the other countries, if we turn aside from the oil and coal and gas addiction and transform to a zero carbon world and thereby prevent the worst of climate change, species extinction, and all the negative events that come from the increasingly negative human impact on the environment. So specifically, Norway is collaborating with California in a climate summit to be held in San Francisco next fall, 2018, and the exchange of scientists and ideas. This is a threat, a global threat, and no one country or even a state as big as California can solve it. It requires collaboration. It's a global problem with many authors, many contributors. And so the solution has to come from an unprecedented collaboration across many sectors and governments.
But you're saying this whilst in Norway, and you know, she is a great exporter of oil and
yes.
fossil fuels.
Right.
Should we just turn that off?
Well, obviously not, because if we did, you wouldn't have gotten here today, because you probably came in a petrol car. So our civilization functions on fossil fuel. Last year, the world consumed about 96 million barrels of oil a day. So that's the marker where we have to find a way, we have to reduce, because we're knowing from the scientists the horrible outcomes of extreme weather events, disease, vectors, changing health patterns. So we know we have to change. You can't do it overnight. You can't turn a switch. But we're seeing the emergence of renewable energy, solar power, now outcompeting coal, and in some sectors, outcompeting oil and gas. So there's a great hope that through invention and innovation and science, that we can live in harmony with nature instead of destroying it at the rate we are. And the climate is changing, and species are being rendered extinct at a rate 10 times faster. I think it's even 100 times faster than was the case for thousands, tens of thousands of years. So humankind is smart, but maybe a little too smart. And now we have to get some wisdom to alter our behavior, find ways other than these polluting carbon emissions to drive our economy and our prosperity.
Well, you say it can be changed or turned back if we change as human beings. Are you in any way in doubt that the climate change is man-made?
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt. I haven't met anybody. There's probably a handful of scientists who would take that position, but the vast majority of scientists are very clear, and clear based on evidence that the buildup of heat-trapping gases increases the median temperature of the planet. And this is happening throughout the whole world. This is empirically proven. The people who...
But there are still politicians in your country and in mine, I have to say, that still don't believe it.
Well, we have people that believe anything. That proves nothing. The science of by biologists, by climatologists, physicists, ecologists, system thinkers, it's overwhelming, way over 95% of the scientists. And of course, the people who say don't listen, many of them are promoting unsustainable ways of life. They don't give a damn about the forests. They don't give a damn about what's going to happen to their kids or their grandkids. Or if they do, they're profoundly ignorant. And that is a difficulty, though. There are skeptics. In America, almost the majority party, the Republicans, are almost to a person non-believers or denialists of climate change. And I'm coming to Bonn to promote the very opposite, climate action based on the science of climate change to prevent the horror and the catastrophe that scientists are predicting if this temperature goes up 2, 3, 4, 5%, non-linear way. We can have feedbacks, tipping points. One doesn't know, but it's a good insurance policy to moderate our human impact on the environment, on the soils, in the animal species.
But where do you think this skepticism stems from? I mean, faced with scientific proofs, as you mentioned, is it stupidity amongst your fellow politicians, with all due respect, or is it big business that's involved? Oh,
big business is, we have big oil companies promoting climate denial, no question, just like the cigarette companies promoted skepticism about the danger of cigarettes. And some of the same public relations personnel are working with some of the oil companies, although in recent years they've begun to pull back. The Republican Party has embraced denial in part because, I think because some of the businesses promoted, they're afraid if they accept climate change, there'll be more rules by government. There'll be constraints on their ability to make and sell oil, to make and sell vehicles, or to continue in their particular venture. That's not true. We can have a very vibrant, prosperous life. In California, our economy is growing, and we have the most stringent environmental laws anywhere in America. and we're continuing on that path.
Are emissions actually going down in California?
Emissions are going down in California.
How is that possible? You have the biggest car park in the United States. You have an increasing population.
We have 32 million vehicles that go 335 billion, I said billion miles a year. So, and we have only 300,000 electric cars, but we're getting more. We are turning it down with renewable energy, low carbon fuel standard, cap and trade, 30% renewable energy, be 50% in 10 years, energy efficiency in our buildings and in our appliances. So we have a very aggressive program. And in addition to that, I am working with other states. In fact, 190 states and provinces throughout the world have joined in what we call the Under 2 Coalition to keep the temperature from rising 2 degrees centigrade from the industrial period. So plenty of difficulty in decarbonizing, no question. But from the science that I've seen, it's an imperative. We have to decarbonize or we're going to wreak havoc on millions, hundreds of millions of people, and the people who will suffer most will be the poor. Right. The poor will suffer, the rich will adapt, and the world will become more divided, more polarized, with greater terrorism, greater discontent, and greater undermining of democratic institutions.
So it all comes together in
It all
one
comes together. There's an environmental imperative, there's a political imperative, there's a moral imperative to transform the current pattern of economic activity to make it compatible with the laws of nature and the survival and well-being of other species and the natural systems that sustain human and all other life on the planet.
Governor, as far as I understand, you have imposed stricter emission rules for cars in California than in any other state in the United States.
Well, the California rule was stricter, but Mr. Obama adopted it for the entire country. So at this point, there's a similarity, but there are people agitating in Congress to weaken the emission standards, but that's not going to work.
That's what I was coming to.
Yes.
You've been very outspoken about your president, Donald Trump. Is he helping or not being helpful in this endeavor?
Well, in a paradoxical way, the Trump factor has been helpful because he's given a bad name to climate denial. As you know, he says that climate change, global warming is a hoax. In fact, it's not only a hoax, he knows where the hoax was created. It was in Beijing. He said it was a Chinese hoax. Now that is so implausible that people are a bit embarrassed by that as the support for climate denial. And by the controversy that has ensued, there has been a dramatic increase in the number of people who support climate action and who believe in the problems, the danger of global warming. So it's not good that we have a president that is not pushing the Paris Accord, but we now have, because of his refusal to continue the Paris commitment, we now have states, we have cities, we have large corporations, we have universities, we have an upwelling of support all across America, in fact, even beyond America, to take action to reduce carbon emissions, which is the imperative.
So you're basically saying that his denial, the president's denial or his stand on climate change is actually a vehicle for more resistance to
I'd call it organizing for climate action. And it isn't just the fact that he said, let's pull out of Paris, but a number of other things the president has said have not persuaded the vast majority of people. If you look at the surveys, it's the president is lucky to have a 40% popularity rating, and
it's
58 to 60.
Yeah.
So he's on the negative side. So that's allowed other people to react. In Virginia, the Democrats won, and there was a greater turnout than ever before. So I think the important point,
In the
though,
governor
yeah,
race,
was elected by
last
9
week,
points.
yeah.
But I want to emphasize one point. Although I don't agree at all with President Trump's claim that climate change is a hoax, I don't think he's the fundamental or even the most important obstacle to doing what is needed to prevent catastrophic climate change. The oil, the cars, the way of life, the packaging, the waste, the whole way our society is organized, we have to transform. And that's bigger than a president. It's bigger than a governor. It's bigger than an oil company.
But he did sign a couple of very controversial laws about the pipeline through Native
Right.
American
No, those are-
land.
yeah.
He signed a law for killing cub bears. He signed the law that he signed. You could shoot the cub bears in the wilderness. There were
Oh yeah, I'm not saying, look, I agree. This is not so good at all. But the problem of transforming an oil-based civilization to a zero-carbon world is so huge, so profound, and so difficult that I wouldn't want to trivialize the challenge we face by saying it's all one guy, the President Trump.
Right.
And people, I think in a very simple-minded way, think of Trump as the problem. That's very simple in the media to create a boogeyman. But the boogeyman is us. It's the current trajectory that got us to this level of prosperity. And without giving up our prosperity to now transition to a zero carbon world, it's going to take decades. It's going to take great innovation and great creativity. And that requires such a universal response that I don't like to just try to associate everything with one factor.
I appreciate
even though that is a problem.
I appreciate that. But didn't you say
Yeah.
about his stance on these
Yeah.
matters last week
Yeah.
at the Vatican
Yeah.
that he represents a lie within a lie, and that his followers are cave dwellers because
No, I
they
didn't
don't-
say that then, but I have called them troglodytes. And troglodytes are cave dwellers.
Right.
So I have said that. And I mean that.
So you
But
still
I
mean
don't
that?
want to say what a lie within a lie because the news reports don't bother to say what I meant. I said, number one, to say climate change is a hoax is a lie. To say it's a Chinese hoax is a lie about a lie or within a lie. So that was the point I said that.
the lie within
And,
the
by the
lie.
way, and nobody believes it, by the way. I would say almost no one believes that climate change is a hoax or a Chinese hoax. They might think, they might not agree with the science, they may minimize it, but that particular characterization is totally 100% unique, has received no following or any support, and therefore is acting as a counter to the very statement it is making. Namely, because that's so absurd, people are beginning to take more seriously the dangers of climate change. Right. I know that's a bit paradoxical thinking. Maybe put it this way.
No, it's-
Think of the Hegelian dialectic. So first we have Obama takes climate action. Then we have Trump, who goes in the opposite direction. And now we have the states and the cities organizing a reaction to the Trump reaction. And there it goes. That's the dialectic, and it's moving in a positive direction.
But you didn't want to say that California is in the lead of a kind of a resistance
Yeah.
against your president.
Yeah.
You
Because
would characterize it in another way, but there is a strong reaction in your state,
because
isn't there?
Resistance conjures up in my mind World War II, people in the underground, people risking their lives, people when we're disagreeing on politics.
But there is still a lot at stake.
There's opposition. Well, there is a lot of at stake, but I think I don't like to define myself over and against one Republican politician. I would rather articulate in a positive way the path that I want to take and that I believe others have to join with me in. That's a positive. That's action. You can talk about I'm resisting Trump or X. No, I am creating, or at least I'm encouraging the creation of a world that will work for everyone.
Governor, you're in your 80, you're pushing 80 now.
I'm pushing it very slowly, very slowly.
As slowly as you can. All right. And you've been a governor for 4 terms,
I'm in my 15th year,
Right.
with some hiatus in between.
with some highs in between, where I have to say, you acted like a true Californian. You studied Zen Buddhism in Japan.
I practiced Zen Buddhism. I didn't just study it.
You practiced
I
it.
practiced Zazen, which is quite a bit different.
Right. And you worked with Mother Teresa in India.
Yes.
And you went to Mexico to study Spanish, or
Yes.
practice your Spanish, probably. What's driving you on this special issue?
On this
special issue when it comes to the climate change and
what's driving me? The truth of the case. The truth of the case is that the power that human beings have created is now destroying the very basis of that power itself, which is our civilization. So I see this issue as so serious that we have to, well, it's not just me that sees it, the scientific community is warning us. Nations have joined in the Paris Accord. So this is virtually a universal recognition, and it's about something important. We have a lot of stuff we do in politics, and some important, dealing with crime or schools or highways or bridges or water. Okay, those are all they're all
important stuff.
They're important. I don't want to call them little, they're important. But it's not like changing the very basis of how life exists. I mean, you know, we have this soil below, which is rather thin, and then we have this atmosphere that we're involved in. It could be like Mars. I'm not saying it's going to happen that way in the next 50 years, but we're setting in motion possibly, and some people would say probably, irreversible trends that by the time you really have it staring you in the face, it's too late. So we have to be able to see over the hill, see that where we're going is not sustainable, not acceptable, and turn. We have to make that turn. It has of the nature of a conversion. Conversion, the word from Latin or even the Greek origin of that word, is a turning. We have to turn away from fossil fuels, first from coal, then from oil and gas. And we have to replace it with renewable energy, with wind and sun and new kinds of materials and different ways of moving about, with the autonomous vehicle, with the shared driving. We can reduce the number of vehicles, we can reduce the impact on the environment. That's very exciting. It elicits creativity, energy, building. That's what societies, if you listen to great historians, Toynbee, for example, how did he describe what you said? Ask what drives me. What drives the civilizations? What drove the Vikings? What drove the Christians? Well, what drove Greece or Rome? You have a challenge, and then you have a response. Challenge and response. That's the way Arnold Toynbee, the great British historian, described the rise and fall of civilizations. Well, we have a challenge. It's called climate change. It's also called nuclear annihilation. Well, the response has to be get rid of the nuclear bombs or highly limit them and deal with climate change. So these are opportunities to either destroy humanity or enlighten and improve it. And I'm following that path to the extent that I possibly can.
I know that you, when you were very young, studied to be a Jesuit priest.
Yes, I did.
So is there a religious element in all this?
Yes, because nature, the rules of nature, physics, biology, chemistry, ecology, those are rules. And they're laws. We may not fully understand them, but we understand little bits of them. And you can't argue with them. It's not like politics. Politics is based on the principle, let's make a deal. You can't make a deal with nature. Nature is sovereign. And we have to get on the side of nature instead of attempting to destroy it, which will be destroying ourselves. So that's why there's a theological analogy. And the analogy is theology deals with the fundamentals. Ecology deals with the fundamentals. And the climate that sustains all living being, That's fundamental, and that's why I do see it having the importance that I earlier ascribed to theology and religion when I went to study to be a Jesuit priest.
Right. So what can you and I do in our everyday life when we go about to do our ordinary things?
Well, you can support political leaders who are trying to do the right thing, and we can talk about it. If you look at the vast flow of news, climate change is a relatively small piece.
But I mean, we can drive cars that are not polluting. What kind of car do you drive, by the way?
Well, actually, now that I'm governor, they drive me. So it's a good fossil fuel car. That's true.
Yeah.
I thought buying a $100,000 Tesla would not be appropriate. For an
official car.
For an official. But we'll get an electric car. They're coming. They're coming around. And I'm promoting electric cars by our work. So yeah, the personal transformation in what you eat, how you construct your house, how you order your life, that's something very difficult for an individual to have impact on the world. We're really talking about the pattern of culture, the pattern of economic relations, and that requires it requires science, it requires intellectual thinking, and then it requires implementation through government policy.
But it's also kind of a state of mind that you have to be conscious about the things you do in your household, what you drive.
Yes,
and all of that.
but I just wanted to make the point that we like to think we're powerful because we're in democracies, but in reality we're a vote, we're a word, we're a thought, and the great forces driving the world are in the saddle. Are driving. And so I wouldn't overemphasize the power of an individual. Now, some individuals, like an Abraham Lincoln or a Mother Teresa or Einstein, yes, some individuals have great impact. But most of us are consigned to more mundane experiences. Right. So I would say our hope is to support a leadership, whether in government, in the academy, or in the churches, or in the media, that can promote truth and clarity and the right pathway forward. That's what we can do. And also, you don't have to waste, and you can compost, and probably don't eat as much meat, and get a little exercise, and ride your bicycle instead of your fossil fuel machine.
Right.
All that's good too.
But you said that we are on a tipping point. If we don't take care now, we're in trouble. That's looking into the abyss.
Well, wait a minute. The scientists say we will hit a tipping point, and we may not know when we hit it. And by the way, we may be nearing the abyss, but most people are looking into the abyss.
Are you an optimist or a pessimist, Mr. Garma?
Well, I would say this. I would say optimism of the will, pessimism of the intellect. So what I see gives me great pause, but I'm very enthused and energized to do as much as I can to promote a sustainable future.
Governor Joe Brown, thanks very much for coming on the program. It was a pleasure talking with you.
Nice to talk to you.
Likewise. Da vår sending over for I kveld, tilbake om en uke med en kanskje like spennende gjest. Ha en riktig god aften.